The city buzzed with a late-night vibrancy that seemed to resonate through the very walls of the penthouse. Its rhythm aligning with the erratic beat of Layla's heart as she struggled with the door handle. The night had unfolded in a whirlwind of laughter and cocktails. A heady blend that left her senses delightfully disoriented, and her coordination notably unsteady. As she tripped over the threshold, the coolness of the marble floor beneath her feet provided a sharp contrast to the warmth that surrounded her, a warmth that was more than the summer air clung to her skin. Her crimson dress, a daring choice, now felt both brazen and utterly appropriate. It adhered to her like a second skin, its sheer fabric a testament to the evening's escapades. The city's humidity caused it to cling, outlining the curves and contours of her body with unapologetic precision. This garment made no secret of its intentions, much like the woman who wore it. The digital display of the clock perched on the mantelpiece, like an unsleeping sentinel, glowed with the audacity of 2 a.m. The harsh red numbers swam before her eyes, a relentless reminder of her tardiness that she felt powerless to contest. Outside, the night continued its indifferent symphony, oblivious to her confusion. It was at that moment that Jordan emerged from the shadows, a quiet figure in the dimness of the penthouse foyer. His arrival was both surprising and comforting. His movements swift and confident as he approached her before she could ascend the staircase. Lila's breath caught in her throat as she was drawn into his presence. She welcomed his arms as they enveloped her, a familiarity that danced on the edge of intimacy. Jordan's hands, strong and steady, found their place at her waist, their warmth seeping through the delicate fabric of her dress. The connection sparked an electric thrill that coursed through her, igniting a warmth unrelated to the summer night, or the alcohol in her veins. His touch served as both a lifeline and a journey, his fingers mapping the contours of her body as he led her away from the looming danger. In her inebriated state, Lla was keenly aware of how her dress rode up as Jordan guided her toward the sanctuary of her room. The movement unveiled a tantalizing expanse of thigh, with the lace edge of her undergarments teasingly peeking out, as if engaging in a playful game of hide-and-seek with the moonlight streaming through the nearby window. She attempted a token protest, a slurred objection that faded on her lips as his grip tightened just enough to convey his silent determination to ensure she reached her bed safely. Her room was a whirlwind of sensations. The plush carpet's softness beneath her feet, the reassuring solidity of Jordan's chest against her back, and the subtle mingling of his cologne with night air that enveloped them both. As they approached the bed, Leia's knees buckled, and she settled onto the mattress's edge, her eyelids heavy with fatigue. Jordan knelt before her, his movements smooth and intentional. He grasped her foot, deftly unfastening the straps of her high heels with a skill that revealed his familiarity with the task. Brief contact of his knuckles against her calf sent a ripple of awareness coursing beneath her skin. She observed him through half-lidded eyes, her thoughts swirling in a fog of confusion and intrigue. As he gently took off her shoes, placing them aside with a softness that felt incongruous with the circumstances, as he readied to depart, Layla extended her hand, grasping his wrist in a bid to ground herself in the moment. Stay, she whispered the word, a breath that lingered in the atmosphere. Gaze locked with hers, the conflict within him as clear as the moonlight that bathed room. For a moment, Lla thought he might concede, might give in to the tension that crackled in the space separating them. But then he pulled away, his hand slipping from her grasp as he rose to his feet. "You should rest," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through her. Lla watched him retreat, her heart pounding in her chest as she allowed herself to fall back onto the bed. The cool silk of the sheets was a stark juxtaposition to the warmth that lingered from Jordan's touch as she cocooned herself in the bedding, her dress twisting around her waist. A twinge of disappointment intertwined with the fading echoes of her intoxication filled the solitude of her room, the distant hum of the city her only companion. Lla closed her eyes, yielding to the pull of sleep, where dreams of shadowed corridors and tender touches beckoned, a realm where the boundaries between stepmother and stepson faded into nothingness. And somewhere deep within her, she understood that the events of the night had triggered a series of changes that would irrevocably shift their relationship. as Lila regained her awareness. It came slowly, like the tide pulling back from the shore. The morning light, filtered through sheer curtains, bathed the room in a golden glow, its warmth failing to chase away the lingering chill. She moved, her limbs feeling weighted, and her head pounding from the excesses of the previous night. The cool sheets against her bare skin felt like a new discovery. Sharp contrast to the warmth that had surrounded her upon her return to the penthouse. Memories of the previous night began to take shape, fragments of an evening that had commenced with the brilliance of city lights, and concluded with the quiet caress of Jordan's hands. She remembered how he had undressed her, his touch a blend of gentleness and intensity, each glide of his fingers leaving a trail of goosebumps in its wake. The memory sent a shiver down her spine. A complex mix of appreciation for his assistance and of the boundaries that had been crossed. With a sigh, Lila extricated herself from the tangle of bedding and padded barefoot to the ensuite bathroom. The shower beckoned, its promise of hot water and solitude a siren call she could not ignore. As she stepped beneath the spray, the water cascaded over her, a liquid symphony that danced across her skin, and washed away the remnants of the night before. She closed her eyes, allowing the steam to envelop her, a misty cocoon that offered a momentary respite from the complexities of her life. Droplets traced the contours of her body, gliding from the curve of her shoulder to the swell hip, each one a gentle reminder of the intimacy that had unfolded in the darkness of her room. Her fit form, honed by discipline and dedication to self-care, responded to the water's touch with a vitality that belied the previous night's excesses. As the water ran clear, devoid of the suds that had clung to her skin, Lila turned off the tap and reached for a plush towel, drying herself with brisk efficiency. Reflection that lingered in the mirror. Unprepared to face the woman staring back at her, a woman whose choices had danced dangerously near the brink of propriety. Draped in a silk robe that caressed her skin, Lila exited the sanctuary of the bathroom and ventured into the kitchen. The penthouse enveloped her in silence, a sharp contrast to the tumult of her thoughts. The familiar ritual of breakfast preparation offered a comforting diversion, the ordinary tasks of beans and slicing bread served as a balm for her tumultuous emotions. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, its rich dark notes mingling with the comforting scent of warm toast. Lila moved with practiced ease, setting the table with care. Each placement of cutlery and pour of orange juice was a step towards the inevitable conversation that awaited her and Jordan. As she prepared poached eggs, her focus was on the delicate dance of timing and temperature, the whites firming up around the gently quivering yolks. The act of cooking became a meditative ritual. A brief reprieve from the tension coiling in her stomach. She plated the food with an artist's precision, the vibrant hues of avocado and cherry tomatoes showcasing her culinary prowess. With breakfast arranged to her liking, Lila took a moment to collect her thoughts. The aromatic swirl of coffee and the sight of the meticulously set table offered comfort. A reminder of the life she had crafted within these walls. Yet, as she called out for Jordan to join her, a fragile tension lingered in the air. Illusion of normalcy threatened to shatter, exposing the raw undercurrent of emotions that simmered just beneath the surface. As Jordan entered the kitchen, subtle shift in the atmosphere was palpable. His eyes met hers. A silent exchange that acknowledged the shift in their dynamics. They took their seats across from each other, the clink of cutlery against china a hollow echo in the otherwise silent room. The breakfast that Lila had prepared with such care now lay between them, a peace offering of sorts, a momentary truce in the aftermath of their shared transgression. Conversation was minimal, confined to the essentials of passing salt and pepper and remarking on the meal's quality. Lila observed Jordan from beneath her lashes, analyzing his reactions, seeking any hint of his thoughts. His demeanor remained inscrutable, his focus seemingly locked on the food before him. It was Lila who ultimately shattered the silence. Her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. "We need to talk about what happened," she began, setting fork aside. Jordan looked up at her words. Expression was guarded. I know, he replied, his tone matching hers in its evenness. But first, let's eat. We'll need our strength for the conversation that's coming. Lala nodded, acquiescing to the delay. She took a sip of her coffee, the bitter taste grounding her in the moment. As they continued their meal, the weight of the impending discussion hung heavy in the air. A silent reminder that the events of the previous night had irrevocably altered the landscape of their relationship. For now they maintained the facade of normalcy. But both knew that the truth demanded attention, and when it arrived, nothing would remain unchanged. The clink of cutlery against fine china created an arrhythmic percussion that filled the penthouse dining area, starkly contrasting the heavy silence enveloping Jordan and Lala. Each scrape of a chair leg against the hardwood floor echoed the discomfort lingering in the air. An unspoken tension hanging between them like a thick fog obscuring the familiar landmarks of their shared existence. Lala sat across from Jordan. She became captivated by the way his throat moved as he swallowed, the action revealing a nervousness he tried so hard to hide. The moment for evasion had come to an end. The events of the previous night couldn't be brushed aside like the crumbs scattered across their plates. With a determination that masked the chaos inside her, Lila placed her fork down, the noise echoing unnaturally in the silence of the room. Jordan, she started, her voice a finely tuned blend of nonchalance and a subtle undertone of urgency. Provocation. I believe it's time we confronted last night, don't you? Jordan's gaze flickered up to meet hers, a brief shadow of weariness crossing his features before he could cloak it with practiced neutrality. What's there to say, he replied, his tone casual, yet his fingers betrayed him, tightening around the handle of his coffee cup. Lala leaned back in her chair, her eyes fixed on him. I was reckless, she confessed openly, and you were my knight in shining armor, weren't you? Her lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Reach her eyes? But I can't help but wonder, did you enjoy the view? The question, once uttered, seemed to hang in the air like a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down between them. It was a loaded inquiry. One that danced along the edge of propriety and threatened to topple the precarious balance of their relationship. Jordan's cheeks flushed a deep crimson, the color clashing sharply with the dark stubble that shadowed his jawline. Aye, he stammered, his composure slipping. It's not like that, I was just trying to help. Lala shrugged, the motion deliberate in its nonchalance. Of course, she said, her voice laced with an undertone of skepticism. I'm not blind, Jordan. I know what I saw in your eyes last night. She paused, allowing her words to sink in, watching as he struggled to maintain his composure. The air between them was charged now, electric with the undercurrents of their shared secret. Jordan opened his mouth as if to offer a retort, but seemed to think better of it, clamping his lips shut and averting his gaze to the remnants of his breakfast instead. Lala, satisfied that she had made her point, lingered in the air as she rose from the table, her movements fluid and intentional. Why don't we take some time to process this, she proposed, her tone softening just a touch. We can revisit the conversation later, when we've both had a chance to clear our heads. Jordan nodded, his relief evident. Yeah, maybe that's for the best, he agreed, his voice barely a whisper. As she retreated to the solitude of her room, a twinge of satisfaction washed over her at having unsettled Jordan. Yet, beneath her bravado, a kernel of uncertainty remained. Uncertainty lingered, a persistent question about the prudence of unearthing the unvoiced longings that had been exposed the previous night. Alone in her room, she allowed herself to ponder the ramifications of her choices. She had deliberately stirred the pot, intentionally eliciting a response from Jordan, but to what purpose? Was it simply a way to reclaim control over a situation that had slipped beyond her reach, or was there a more sinister motivation lurking beneath the surface? As she lay on her bed, gazing up at the ceiling, she was compelled to face the uncomfortable truth: she was engaging in a perilous endeavor. One that could threaten to tear apart the very foundation of their family and leave enduring marks behind. Yet, in spite of the looming dangers, she felt an undeniable pull toward the edge. Captivated by the excitement of the unknown, and the temptation of the taboo. In the solitude of her room, Layla shut her eyes and yielded to the whirlwind of her feelings, a storm of longing, remorse, and a growing anticipation for what lay ahead. The day unfolded before her, and an unwritten chapter loomed, poised to challenge the very limits of her bond with Jordan in ways she had never envisioned. As the afternoon faded into early evening, the lengthening shadows danced across the penthouse floor. Lla sought refuge in the familiar ritual of preparing dinner. The rhythmic chopping of vegetables and the sizzling meat in the pan provided a fleeting reprieve from her tumultuous thoughts. The kitchen, adorned with gleaming appliances and infused with rich aromas, became her sanctuary. A space where she could impose order and stability. Even as her personal life appeared to be falling apart. Jordan, settled at the kitchen island, observed her with a quiet intensity that was both unsettling and strangely comforting. His presence was a steady element in her life, a constant she had learned to depend on, even as the lines of their relationship began to fade. His silence, though not uncommon, felt more pronounced following their earlier discussion, a noticeable barrier that Lla found herself both respecting and "Been quiet," she remarked, her voice slicing through the kitchen's quiet hum with surgical precision. The statement hung between them, an acknowledgement of the elephant in the room that neither had yet to address directly. Jordan's gaze lifted to meet hers, a flicker of something unreadable passing over his features. "Just thinking," he replied, his tone noncommittal. Yet the tightness around his eyes betrayed a degree of discomfort that he could not entirely conceal. Lla sat down, knife-sheathed hands as she spoke, her voice steady yet infused with emotion. "We can't just pretend that last night was a figment of our imagination, Jordan," she said, each word carefully chosen. "Something happened, something that can't be undone. We need to talk about it to understand what it means for us moving forward." The atmosphere between them was charged, the weight of her unspoken implications palpable. Lla held Jordan's gaze. Her expression firm, even as her heart raced with uncertainty. An intricate blend of excitement and unease, she turned away and approached one of the kitchen drawers. Her fingers deftly found what she sought, a bottle of gin, its amber liquid a beacon of bravery in the fading light of the kitchen. She retrieved 2 crystal tumblers from an overhead cabinet, placing them on the counter with a firm clink. "Perhaps a drink will loosen our tongues," she proposed, her voice tinged with irony as she poured a generous measure into each glass. The sound of the gin filling the air. The words flowed like a waterfall, filling the quiet of the kitchen with a cascade of possibilities that could either refine their dialogue or plunge it into uncharted territory. Jordan observed her, his face a mask of neutrality, as she moved closer, offering one of the tumblers in his direction. Their fingers grazed during the handoff, a brief touch that ignited a spark of awareness within Leia. She dismissed the feeling, retreating to the perceived safety of the far side of the kitchen island. She lifted her glass in a quiet gesture of acknowledgement. The first taste of gin jolted her senses, its sharpness a vivid reminder of the drink's strength and the weight of the discussion to come. Lla observed Jordan as he took a sip, the movement of his throat evident as he swallowed. His gaze fixed intently on her. "You're right," he finally admitted, his voice a deep rumble that filled the kitchen. "We can't act like everything is fine, but I'm not sure if alcohol is the answer." "The answer?" Lla shrugged, rugged, her fingers tracing the contours of the tumbler in her hand. "It's not about finding an answer, Jordan," she replied, her tone softening slightly. "It's about giving ourselves permission to be honest with each other, and with ourselves. Maybe the gin will help us get there." As they continued to sip their drinks in a silence that was now more companionable than strained, Layla could not help but feel a sense of accomplishment. She had broached the subject, had forced them both to acknowledge the shift in the realm of their relationship. The path ahead loomed uncertain, laden with potential pitfalls and emotional landmines. Yet they pressed on together, a testament to their resolve. The evening unfolded with a cautious camaraderie. easing the tension that had characterized their earlier exchanges. They engaged in light conversation, a delicate dance that skirted the core issue that had led them here. The dinner prepared by LLA was consumed with an air of normalcy that felt almost surreal, given the weight of the circumstances, as the evening cast its shadow over them. Stretched across the penthouse, a subtle transformation unfolded within its walls. The gin that Lila had poured with such deliberation now coursed through their veins. A warm tide that loosened tongues and dissolved barriers with an ease that was both liberating and disconcerting. The atmosphere in the room shifted, becoming charged with an undercurrent of desire that was as intoxicating as the drinks they sipped. Jordan's gaze, previously so carefully averted, now drifted with increasing frequency over the contours of Lila's form. Body, his eyes a shade darker than usual, traced the lines of her figure, with an intensity that was almost tangible, a silent acknowledgement of the attraction that simmered just beneath the surface of their interactions. Lila, fully aware of the effect she was having, reveled in the power of her femininity. The gin had infused her with a boldness that was both exhilarating and uncharacteristic, a fertile audacity that compelled her to push the boundaries of their relationship to its limits. She leaned forward to place her on the table. A drink sat, the motion causing her dress to part slightly, unveiling a captivating glimpse of cleavage that drew Jordan's gaze like a moth to a flame. "Is something catching your interest, Jordan?" she teased, her voice a sultry whisper that enveloped him, pulling him deeper into her allure. She observed with satisfaction as a flush crept up his neck, a physical sign of his internal battle for composure. Leaning back in her chair, the fabric of her dress tightened across her chest, a calculated move. Provocation that left little to the imagination. Lila knew she was playing with fire. Yet she found herself unable, or perhaps unwilling, to extinguish the flames that threatened to consume them both. The game of cat and mouse continued as LLA rose from her seat, her movements languid and deliberate. She made her way to the other side of the room, ostensibly to retrieve a fallen napkin. But the true purpose of her actions was written in the subtle sway of her hips, the deliberate parting of her legs as she bent down, affording Jordan had an unobstructed view of the lace that hugged her curves. The tension in the room reached a fever pitch, a palpable pulse that thrummed in the air around them. The gin had done its work, stripping away layers of inhibition to reveal the raw, unvarnished truth of their desire for one another. In that moment, as LLA straightened and turned to face Jordan, her eyes locked onto his, there was no turning back. With a boldness that belied the turmoil within her, LLA closed the distance between them, each step a silent declaration of her intentions. Jordan's breath caught in his throat as he observed her approach, his body taut with anticipation for the storm that was about to erupt. When their lips finally met, it was a clash of wills. It was a kiss that conveyed unspoken longings and forbidden desires, a testament to the magnetic pull that existed between them. Despite the rational arguments that whispered of caution and restraint, Leia's fingers threaded through Jordan's hair, pulling him closer and deepening the kiss in a silent demand for more. Jordan's hands, which had remained at his sides throughout the evening, now found their way to her waist, gripping her with a possessiveness that left no room for doubt regarding his feelings. The world outside the penthouse ceased to exist, its demands and expectations fading into insignificance in the face of the passion that now consumed Leia. Jordan. Their kiss became a bridge across the vast divide of their shared dilemma, a bold journey into the unknown. What began as a cautious exploration swiftly transformed into a fervent declaration of longing. It felt as if a dam had shattered within them, unleashing a flood of emotions that had been brewing since the night before. The taste of gin lingered on their tongues, an intoxicating elixir that ignited the passion with which they yearned to possess one another. Their once measured movements now surged with urgency, a frantic intensity that could not be contained. That bordered on desperation. Lila's hands roamed over the muscular planes of Jordan's back, her nails scoring his skin through the fabric of his shirt, an unspoken plea for more contact. More connection, more of the intoxicating sensation that coursed through her veins like wildfire. In response, Jordan's touch grew bolder. his hands skimming the curves of her body with a reverence that belied his growing need. The thin straps of her dress were no match for his deft fingers, slipping from her shoulders with ease to reveal the lace-clad swell of her breasts. The garment pulled at her feet, a silken puddle that served as a testament to the passion now ruling their actions. Clothing, once a barrier between them, became superfluous, an inconvenience shed with an urgency that left no room for modesty or hesitation. Each discarded item marked a milestone on their journey towards complete and total abandon. A trail of breadcrumbs leading to the heart of Lila's bedroom. There on the soft expanse of her bed, they came together with a hunger that bordered on frenzy. The boundaries of their relationship, which had once appeared so unchangeable, now crumbled under the weight of their mutual longing. The titles of stepmother and stepson lost all significance in the face of their overwhelming need for each other, a need that surpassed societal expectations and family bonds. Leia's body responded to Jordan's touch, her skin igniting with sensation, every nerve ending alive to the feel of his hands on her. She savored the heaviness of him, the firmness of his body pressing her into the mattress. A palpable reminder that this was not simply a figment of imagination but a truth, albeit one laden with repercussions they had yet to fully contemplate. Jordan, for his part, appeared equally entranced by the woman before him, his eyes, shadowed with longing, traversed her form with an expression of awe, as if he could scarcely comprehend her reality, that she was present with him, surrendering herself with a fervor that mirrored his own. Their bond was a vibrant, pulsating force, a union of flesh and spirit that transcended. Each caress unfolded like a revelation, an exploration of the uncharted territories of their relationship. The air was thick with the scent of their passion, a musky perfume mingling with the faint aroma of gin, and the lingering remnants of their cologne. As they moved together, their bodies found a rhythm as ancient as time itself. Lla was acutely aware of the significance of the moment. This was no mere tryst, no casual indulgence in the throes of passion. It was a turning point, a crossing of the Rubicon from which there could be no turning back. The world outside the sanctuary of Lila's bedroom ceased to exist, its concerns and complications rendered irrelevant by the intensity of their connection. There was only Jordan. His body joined with hers in a dance as old as humanity itself, a dance that celebrated the beauty and power of human desire in its purest, most unadulterated form. The fervor of their coupling had reached a fever pitch, each moment a crescendo of passion that demanded to be memorialized. In a move that was both bold and true to her essence, she freed herself from Jordan's embrace, her skin aglow with the warmth of their shared passion. With a sultry smile that hinted at a return to their intimate dance, she reached for the bedside table, her fingers wrapping around the sleek form of her camera. Jordan observed her through heavy-lidded eyes, his breath still coming in short, sharp bursts as he absorbed the sight of her, naked, unashamed, and utterly captivating. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice a low rasp that revealed his intrigue. Lingering desire danced in Leia's eyes, gleaming with mischief as she met his gaze. "I want to capture this," she declared, her tone matter-of-fact, even as a blush crept across her cheek, highlighting the stark contrast between her bold actions and the vulnerability that lay beneath. "I want to remember us like this, untamed, unrestrained, and utterly consumed by each other." With practiced ease, she positioned the camera on its tripod, angling it to ensure that the lens captured not only their tangled forms, but also the raw, unfiltered emotion that suffused the moment. In the room, the camera's focus adjusted, the lens zooming in on the interplay of shadows and light that danced across their bodies, a visual symphony that mirrored the tumult of their passion. As the recording began, Lla returned to Jordan's side, her body pressing against his with a familiarity that spoke of hours spent exploring the contours of each other's forms. The presence of the camera did nothing to dampen their ardor. If anything, it served to amplify their desire, adding an extra layer of excitement to their already intense connection. Charged encounter, their movements resumed a sensual ballet that was both tender and demanding. The camera captured every gasp, every moan, every moment of exquisite pleasure that played across their FACES. It recorded the rhythm of their bodies, the subtle shifts in their expressions, and the unspoken communication that passed between them as they navigated the intricate dance of their lovemaking as they climbed higher, driven by a need that bordered on desperation. Lla found herself lost in the depths of Jordan's gaze, her world narrowing to the man who captivated her completely. The camera as island witness to their union continued to capture the moment when their control finally broke, sending them spiraling into the depths of ecstasy. The sound of their ragged breathing filled the room, the sole accompaniment to the visual testament of their chemistry. The camera's lens, slick with the mist of their exertions, remained fixed on them even as their bodies went limp, faded and spent from the intensity of their climax. In the aftermath, as they lay entangled in the sweat-soaked sheets, Lila reached out to switch off the camera. The red recording light flickered and died, leaving them in the soft glow of the room's dimmed lighting. With the press of a button, she had immortalized the most intimate moment of her life, a decision that would forever alter the landscape of their relationship. Jordan turned to her, his expression a mixture of awe and trepidation. "Lila, what have we done?" he murmured, his hand coming up to brush a stray lock of hair from her forehead. Lila's response was a soft kiss. A soft acknowledgement of the decision they embraced. "We've experienced," she said quietly, her voice just above a murmur, "we've permitted ourselves to experience something genuine, something profound, and I for one have no regrets." As the night wore on and their breaths synchronized, they surrendered to the embrace of slumber, their forms still closely intertwined. The camera, now silent, stood watch in the corner of the room, a keeper of their shared confidences, and the unspoken proof of a love that challenged norms. The dawn light with its unforgiving clarity seeped into the bedroom, casting a stark glow over the rumpled sheets where Jordan lay sleeping. Lla stirred, her body alive with the aches and pains of their passionate lovemaking, each twinge a vivid reminder of the boundaries they had crossed in the heat of the night. As she gently extricated herself from Jordan's embrace, her movements were deliberate and measured, a silent ballet designed to preserve the sanctity of his slumber. She stole one last glance at the man who had become both her greatest joy. As she slipped from the room, a storm of conflicting emotions swirled within her. The cool marble of the penthouse floor felt like a jolt against her bare feet as she made her way to her home office. There, the sight of her camera and the digital evidence of their shared transgressions filled her with a sense of resolve that belied the trembling of her hands. With determination, she powered on the camera and queued up the footage from the previous night. The screen flickered to life, revealing the intimate tableau that had unfolded within these very walls. The sight of their entwined bodies and the sound of their mingled cries of passion filled the room, a potent reminder of the depths of their desire for one another. Lla knew that the existence of these recordings posed a significant risk, one that could potentially unravel the fragile tapestry of lies and half-truths they had woven around their relationship. With a heavy heart, she selected the files and hit delete, watching as the digital traces of their lovemaking disappeared from the screen, one by one until nothing remained but the sterile emptiness of the camera's memory card. Having erased all evidence of their night together, Lla retreated to the relative safety of the kitchen. The familiar ritual of preparing coffee provided a much-needed distraction from the whirlwind of thoughts that clamored for attention within her mind. The rich dark beans, ground to perfection and expertly ped into the espresso machine's filter, were a testament to her dedication to craft and routine, a small yet significant anchor in the choppy waters of her emotional upheaval. The scent of brewing coffee, robust and comforting, soon filled the penthouse. Its aromatic tendrils wound their way through the hallways and into the bedroom, where Jordan still lay asleep. It was this scent, as much a part of their morning routine as the sunrise itself, that eventually drew him from the warmth of the bed and down the stairs to the kitchen. As Jordan entered the room, his hair tousled from sleep and his body clad in the previous night's discarded clothing, Lila's breath caught in her throat. The sight of him, undeniably handsome, undeniably hers, if only in the secret recesses of her heart, sent a jolt of longing coursing through her veins. Their eyes met across the island, a silent change that spoke volumes more than words ever could. In the depths of Jordan's gaze, Lla saw the acknowledgement of the shift in their relationship, a tacit recognition of the new landscape they now navigated together. The air between them was charged with a potent mixture of desire, trepidation, and an overwhelming sense of connection that both thrilled and unnerved her. The espresso machine hissed and gurgled its mechanical symphony, a stark contrast to the quiet that had settled over them. Lala turned away, focusing her attention on the task at hand. Her fingers deftly preparing 2 cappuccinos with the precision of long practice. The milk frothed to perfection, forming a creamy cap atop the dark espresso, a visual representation of the dichotomy that existed within their relationship, dark and light, comfort and danger, all swirling together. Intoxicating blend, she slid one of the cups across the island towards Jordan, her movements deliberate and controlled, a stark contrast to the chaos that raged within her. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. Jordan, his eyes never leaving hers, reached for the cup, his fingers brushing against hers in the process. The contact, fleeting as it was, sent a shiver of awareness coursing through Lila's body, a visceral reminder of the passion they had shared just hours earlier. "Morning," he replied. His voice a low rumble resonated within the kitchen's confines. He took a sip of his coffee, his gaze dropping to the cup in his hands, a silent acknowledgement of the tension that now hung between them. They stood there for a moment, separated by the granite expanse of the kitchen island, each lost in their own thoughts as they wrestled with the implications of their actions. The morning light, once a symbol of hope and new beginnings, now cast long shadows over their shared existence, hinting at the complexities that lay ahead. Sipped their coffee in a silence that was both comfortable and heavy with unspoken thoughts. Lala understood that the time for avoidance had passed. The events of the previous night had irrevocably altered the fabric of their relationship. It was essential for them both to confront the reality of their situation head-on. "We need to talk," she began, setting her coffee cup down on the counter with a decisive clink. "What happened between us last night changes everything, Jordan. We can't pretend it was just a one-time thing. That it didn't mean anything." Anything. Jordan looked up at her words, his expression a blend of apprehension and determination. "I know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I don't want to pretend either. I meant what I said last night, Lala. I'm in this all the way, but we need to figure out what comes next. We need a plan." Lala nodded, grateful for his candor, even as her mind raced with the enormity of the task that lay before them. "We need to be careful," she said, her tone measured and earnest. "We have to protect ourselves and our family. We can't let our relationship tear down all that we have painstakingly constructed." They engaged in a lengthy dialogue, wandering through a maze of possibilities and imagined outcomes. Their discussion delved into the intricacies of keeping their connection hidden, emphasizing the necessity of setting firm boundaries to avoid undue complications, as well as the critical importance of maintaining complete confidentiality in every facet of their relationship. As the hours passed, a flicker of hopeful anticipation began to blossom within Leia's heart, offering solace in the face of the obstacles that lay ahead. Understanding that she and Jordan were united in their resolve to face the intricacies of their relationship with sincerity and integrity, by the time the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the city below, they had come to a tentative agreement on how to proceed. The specifics of their arrangement were far from ideal, yet they symbolized a mutual commitment to delve into the depths of their bond without compromising the stability and security of their family unit. As they stood on the balcony, as she observed the sky shift from a serene blue to a vibrant canvas of reds and oranges, Lila felt an undeniable connection to Jordan. Their destinies were woven together by a love that challenged conventions and familial pressures. The journey ahead promised challenges and uncertainties, yet as she grasped Jordan's hand, their fingers entwining in a way that echoed their many shared experiences, a wave of optimism washed over her. Together, they would confront whatever lay ahead, their love shining brightly as a guiding light, lit up the shadows and led them through the unknown paths that awaited. The penthouse, once a mark of affluence and status, transformed into a refuge for their affection, a hidden haven where they could indulge in the splendor of their bond, shielded from the scrutinizing gazes and critical murmurs of the outside world. As dusk descended and the city's lights sparkled like far-off stars, Lila and Jordan found solace in their sanctuary, reassured that their love, though atypical, was a powerful force. Considered a reflection of the remarkable influence of fervor and the lasting resilience of the human spirit.